Hey, Sipsters, and welcome back to Sip and Talk.
Back at it again.
Round two. Round two, I like that.
Deep dive round two.
Exactly, on this topic.
Yeah, so how's everybody doing today?
Doing well.
I am ready to sip and talk.
Always ready to sip and talk.
I am. I just had the most amazing cold brew, and it just
Oh, nice.
woke up my brain.
Yeah, got to get that caffeine kick.
It's dangerous.
Especially when we're going to talk about this topic.
It is dangerous. We need our brains to be functioning at the highest level for this one.
For sure.
Because you guys wouldn't believe
Oh, my God.
the mountain of DMs that we got.
So many.
After our last deep dive.
Oh.
Remember all that talk about objectification and, chess.
That was a heated topic.
Yes. It was. A lot of people were chiming in.
A lot of listeners.
A lot of listeners, especially people, I think, who maybe felt like we needed to show the other side of the coin a little bit more.
Right.
Which is why we're here today. We're here to give a balanced perspective.
Is objectification really just a women's issue?
Right.
What about men?
Is it a two-way street?
Is it a two-way street?
That's what we're going to talk about today.
Because, let's face it, we've all seen those magazine covers with those chiseled guys.
Oh, yeah.
With their six-pack abs.
Airbrushed.
Airbrushed, of course.
Perfect lighting.
Perfect lighting. Is that just harmless eye candy?
Right.
Or is it something more?
Is it objectification?
I don't know. It's a question of the day.
It is.
So, and, speaking of prepping for this deep dive.
Yes.
We stumbled across some really fascinating
research.
Yeah.
Very interesting research.
So let's unpack this thing.
Let's get into it.
I love a good mystery. And this whole male objectification thing.
It is a mystery.
It's like a puzzle we're trying to solve.
Right.
Where do we even begin?
I think a good place to start is pop culture.
Okay.
Think about superhero movies.
Okay.
Chris Hemsworth as Thor.
Okay, I see where we're going.
Those
bulging biceps.
Sculpted physique.
Practically a character in themselves.
Oh, for sure.
Right.
You can't have Thor without the muscles.
Yeah, I can't deny that those muscles are definitely a part of his appeal, and he seems to work really hard
Oh, yeah.
to maintain that physique.
Absolutely.
But are we saying that all men are expected to look like that?
Well,
Seems a bit extreme, right?
Maybe not to that extreme,
Rather-
but there is a standard being set.
Right.
And this goes beyond Hollywood. Even in everyday life, you see advertisements,
Yeah.
fitness models.
Yeah.
There's definitely pressure to have that perfect body.
I see what you mean.
Yeah.
Like there's this underlying message that a man's worth is somehow tied to his physical appearance.
Mm-hmm.
But is that really objectification?
Right.
Isn't it different from what women experience?
Yeah, that's a good question.
I don't know.
Where do we draw the line between appreciating someone's attractiveness and objectifying them?
Yeah.
In our research, we found this 2022 psychology study that actually linked men's height
What?
to their confidence,
Really?
particularly in dating scenarios,
So taller guys are more confident.
according to this study.
What about all those short kings out there
You're right.
who are killing it?
Absolutely.
Height shouldn't define your confidence.
I agree.
It's what's on the inside that counts.
100%. But this study really highlighted how even something like height, which you can't really control, can become a factor
Oh, wow.
in how men perceive themselves and how society perceives them.
Oh, that's interesting.
It kind of feeds into that whole idea of what is considered the ideal male body.
So are we saying that these seemingly harmless ideals about height and muscles and all that
Yeah.
are actually contributing to this culture of male objectification?
It's something to think about.
That's kind of mind-blowing.
It's more nuanced
Yeah.
than we often realize.
For sure.
And it goes beyond just physical attributes. We also need to consider the pressure on men to conform to those traditional masculine stereotypes.
Okay, yeah, I know where we're going with this.
The whole be tough.
Like, men can't cry.
Don't show your emotions.
Oh, yeah, that's a classic.
Be a man.
Because then you seem weak.
Right.
That's definitely messed up.
Yeah.
But wait, is that really objectification, though?
That's a great question.
I don't know.
It's something that we really wrestled with while we were researching this.
Okay.
So could this pressure to suppress emotions to fit into this box of what a real man should be,
Yeah.
could that actually be a form of objectification?
I never thought about it that way.
Yeah.
It's like saying a man can't be his true self.
Right.
He has to put on this act
Yeah.
in order to be accepted or valued.
It's limiting their humanity.
It's like they're being reduced to a set of expected behaviors rather than being seen as a complete person.
100%.
Wow, that's deep stuff. So are we saying that male objectification is like this secret hidden pressure that's been there all along?
Possibly.
But like we focus so much on what women experience that we've kind of overlooked this whole other side of the coin.
It's definitely more nuanced than we realize.
Okay.
There's a lot to unpack here.
Yeah.
But the more we dug into it, the more we realized this isn't just about six-pack abs and bulging biceps.
It's deeper than that.
It's about a system of expectations and pressures that can affect men just as deeply as it affects women.
Okay, I am officially intrigued.
Yes.
So where do we go from here?
Good question.
We've got pop culture, we've got these fascinating psychological studies, we've got this whole emotional suppression thing going on.
Yeah.
Where do we even begin to unravel this whole male objectification mystery?
Well, I think it's time we break it down
Okay.
even further, and we look at some specific examples, dive into some real-life experiences, and try to understand how this objectification thing plays out in different contexts.
Okay, sounds like a plan. We're about to get real deep here, folks, so grab your sips, get comfy, and get ready to explore the world of male objectification with us.
Let's do it. So, while we were going through all this research, something that really stood out to me was this whole body positivity movement.
Oh, yeah.
It's gained so much traction in recent years.
For sure.
But it's interesting to see how it kind of manifests differently for men and women.
Yeah, totally. Like, we see all these amazing women embracing their bodies and, challenging those unrealistic beauty standards.
Mm-hmm.
But what about the guys?
Yeah.
Is there like a male equivalent to all that body love revolution?
There is. The men's body positivity movement.
Okay.
It's definitely a thing. It's gaining momentum.
Okay.
But I think it's facing a unique set of challenges.
Yeah, I can see that, like, we've been conditioned for so long to believe that men should be strong and stoic, and admitting you have body image issues.
Right.
That you're struggling with self-acceptance. It's almost like admitting weakness.
Right.
In some circles.
It's like there's this unspoken rule that guys aren't supposed to talk about this stuff.
Yeah.
But the truth is, so many men are dealing with these pressures, these insecurities about their bodies.
Okay, but hold on a second. We've talked about muscles. We've talked about height. We've talked about emotional suppression.
Yeah.
But what about those guys who don't fit the typical masculine mold?
Right.
Like, what about the LGBTQ plus community?
That is a fantastic point. And in our research, we found a 2019 study that found really high levels of body image anxiety within the LGBTQ plus population.
Interesting.
Which is a reminder that these societal pressures, these ideas about what's considered attractive or desirable, they extend far beyond just heterosexual norms.
Totally. It's like everyone's trying to fit into some box.
Right.
Some predetermined idea of what they should look like.
Yeah.
It's exhausting.
It is. And, it's interesting to think about how these pressures manifest within the LGBTQ plus community specifically.
Yeah.
Like, there are all these labels and categories based on body type.
Oh, yeah, like bears and twinks.
Exactly.
All these other terms.
It's almost like a whole different set of body image standards.
Yeah, it's wild.
It is.
It speaks to the diversity of preferences.
Yeah.
Which is great. But it also highlights how even within a community that's often seen as more accepting and open-minded,
right,
these pressures and anxieties still exist.
Absolutely.
Okay, so we've got this whole spectrum of male objectification happening.
Yeah.
From those superhero ideals to the pressures to be emotionally stoic to the unique challenges within the LGBTQ plus community.
A lot.
It is a lot.
Yeah.
Where do we even go from here?
Well,
like, how do we start to break down these harmful expectations?
I think one way is to start challenging those rigid definitions of masculinity.
Okay.
Like, we've got guys out there like Justin Bobby who are totally defying those norms, mixing masculine and feminine traits.
I love Justin Bobby.
Just being their authentic selves.
He's the ultimate rule breaker.
He is.
Doesn't care what anyone thinks.
Exactly. And he's a great example of how we can start to dismantle these narrow, limiting definitions of what it means to be a man.
Okay, so defying expectations is key.
Mm-hmm.
But how do we actually change the way people perceive men?
Right.
Like, how do we shift those ingrained biases that lead to objectification in the first place?
That's where it gets really interesting.
Okay.
You remember that Pansai article?
Yes.
About how our brains actually process images of men and women differently?
Wait, yeah, the global versus local perception thing.
Yes.
Refresh my memory.
So basically the research showed that people tend to see women more as a collection of body parts.
Okay.
Focusing on specific features, like they'll notice her legs, her chest, her hair, all as separate entities.
Oh, wow.
But with men, they tend to perceive them more holistically as a whole person.
Wait, so you're saying our brains are literally wired to objectify women more than men?
It's fascinating.
That's crazy.
It suggests that there's this subconscious bias in how we visually perceive genders.
Okay, so how do we change that?
Well,
do we need to rewire our brains?
It's not about rewiring. It's about becoming aware of these biases.
Okay.
Like next time you see a picture of someone, whether it's a man or a woman, pay attention to how you're looking at them.
Okay.
Are you noticing individual parts or are you seeing the whole person?
That's a good exercise.
Yeah.
Like being more mindful of our gaze.
Right.
How we're taking in information.
Exactly.
But how does that relate to the whole objectification thing?
Well, if we're constantly focusing on individual body parts, we're more likely to see people as objects rather than complete individuals. It's like we're reducing them to a sum of their parts rather than appreciating them for their full humanity.
Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah.
So it's not just about what we see, it's about how we see it.
Exactly.
It's about challenging those ingrained ways of perceiving the world, those subtle biases that we might not even realize we have.
Right. And, this whole discussion about perception really ties into how we use language to talk about objectification.
Okay.
Like the term itself is often used to critique systems of exploitation.
Okay.
Whether it's workers in unfair labor contracts or traditional gender roles in marriages.
Oh, wait, hold up. You're saying objectification isn't just about bodies.
Right.
It can apply to other situations too.
Absolutely.
Whoa.
Think about it. When someone is objectified, they're being treated as a means to an end.
Okay.
A tool to be used or controlled. Their value is reduced to their usefulness rather than their inherent worth as a human being.
Wow, that's deep.
It is.
So like if a worker is being exploited, they're being objectified because their labor is seen as more valuable than their well-being.
Exactly. Their humanity is being overlooked, their needs and rights disregarded, all for the sake of profit or some other goal.
Okay, I'm starting to see the bigger picture here.
Yeah.
It's like objectification is this insidious force that can seep into so many aspects of our lives.
For sure.
It's about power dynamics. About who holds the power and who gets treated as less than human.
You got it. And it's important to recognize those power dynamics and challenge them wherever we see them.
Okay.
Whether it's in the workplace, in relationships, or in the way we perceive and interact with each other.
Okay, I'm with you so far. But hold on, there's got to be a flip side to this, right?
Yeah.
I mean, isn't there a danger in taking this concept too far?
Yeah.
Like if we're constantly policing how people express themselves or interact with each other.
Right. That's a good point. Some would argue that using the language of objectification too broadly could actually limit individual choices.
Right.
Like if we're constantly worried about offending someone or stepping on toes.
It could almost become like a thought police situation.
Right.
Like you can't even compliment someone without worrying about being accused of objectification.
Exactly. And that's why it's so important to have these nuanced conversations about this.
Yeah.
We need to find a way to advocate for respect and autonomy without stifling individual agency.
Finding that balance between fighting against harmful systems while also respecting individual choices.
Right. And it's interesting to consider how this whole conversation about objectification might evolve.
Yeah.
As our ideas about gender roles and societal expectations continue to change.
Right. What if we reach a point where those traditional ideas of masculinity and femininity become totally irrelevant?
Exactly. What if those rigid categories just completely dissolve?
Yeah.
How would that impact our understanding of objectification?
That's a really good question. Maybe we'd start to see people more as individuals.
Right.
Rather than through the lens of gender stereotypes.
Exactly.
Maybe that would lead to a more nuanced appreciation of beauty and attraction.
Yeah.
One that's not based on these narrow, objectified ideals.
Possibly.
Maybe we'd even develop a whole new language to talk about these things.
Right.
One that moves beyond the limitations of terms like objectification.
It's an exciting possibility.
It is.
And it highlights how these conversations need to be ongoing.
Yeah.
We have to stay curious. Keep questioning.
Yeah.
The learning never stops.
It does.
We're constantly evolving, expanding our understanding, and hopefully becoming more compassionate and empathetic along the way.
So what's the takeaway here?
That's a good question.
Like if our listeners are walking away from this episode with one key thought, what would you want it to be?
I would want them to remember that this isn't just about men versus women or us versus them.
Okay.
It's about recognizing that we're all part of this interconnected web of human relationships.
Yeah.
And we all have a role to play in creating a more just and equitable world.
I love that it's about recognizing our shared humanity.
Yes.
Breaking down those barriers and working together to create a world where everyone feels seen, valued, and respected.
Too sad.
Keep learning. Keep sipping.
Keep sipping.
But for real, this deep dive has given me a lot to think about.
Me too.
It's like I knew objectification was a thing.
Yeah.
But I never really considered all the layers and nuances involved.
Seeing those bigger pictures.
Yes.
And having those aha moments.
Absolutely.
And, you know, sometimes a little whiskey helps with that process too.
Always.
Speaking of which, Micky's Mickytolife channel probably has a whole playlist dedicated to pondering life's big questions with a glass in hand.
I'm sure Micky's got some tips over on his Mickytolife channel for pairing the perfect dram.
That sounds like the perfect way to wrap up this conversation.
So to all our listeners out there with those late-night philosophical ponderings,
I'm sure he does.
Keep those glasses full and keep those conversations flowing.
Absolutely. Thanks for joining us for another deep dive here on Sip and Talk.
We'll catch you next time.